Hello and welcome to 3 Minute Game Pass. I'm Nathan, and today I'm going to take this Game Pass games with your time and bandwidth. Today's game is Tainted Grail Conquest. People really like Slay the Spire. So what if you made Slay the Spire, but based on a board game that was set in a dark Arthurian legend world? You'd get this game. Tainted Grail Conquest is a PC-only release that does have achievements. It does seem to be a bit taxing on hardware. We'll get to that later, so just FYI, and the game lasts about 12 to 20 hours. So what exactly is Tainted Grail Conquest? Well, it's a deck-building, turn-based combat roguelike with an emphasis on exploration and unlocks, as well as a lot of deep Western RPG-style decision-making and consequences. You play as an unknown immigrant to Camelot who is killed as an evil mist called the Weirdness overtakes Avalon. You're revived from death by a goat man who explains time is dilating and everything has gone to pot, so it's up to you to kill a bunch of monsters, journey into the weird to save villagers, and generally fix stuff through turn-based combat and deck building. The basic combat of Tainted Grail should be familiar to anyone who has played Slay the Spire. You draw from a deck of cards that you actively build over your quest, with each card costing energy. You are granted a limited number of energy each round to play the cards with, and then the enemy attacks. You know what the enemies are going to do before your turn, so you can prepare. For example, you can play shield cards to block damage, or if you know they're going to do something really mean, you can attempt to stun. Outside of combat, you'll be exploring Avalon through the Weird, which requires burning candles to prevent damage. Depending on if you have a candle lit, might affect random cards added to your deck with each encounter, good or bad. Winning encounters gives rewards of a varying type, many of which are actually RPG quest lines that persist across runs. Each zone has a legendary monster, which is the boss that resets the zone. Unlike most roguelikes, your progress regarding which monsters you've killed persists on death, which is nice. The other big system is the tons of different job classes to unlock, each with significantly different decks, ultimate abilities, and mechanics compared to the others. And this isn't even going into the deep and persistent currency, saving villagers to add to the town. You could then provide permanent upgrades to potions, weapons, and rune slots on weapons, and so on. There's a lot going on in between runs that you're going to have to get a handle of. So what do I like about Tainted Grail Conquest? Well, the variety of classes is excellent, and each one plays considerably different than the other. I actually really didn't like the first class and was going to give up on playing, but then I unlocked the Summoner, and they were an absolute blast, and that kept me playing to unlock the rest of them. Additionally, the RPG elements that require choice and continued quest lines are great, and really help flesh out the lore of this world as you continue your runs through it. And lastly, this game's aesthetic and particularly soundtrack are fantastic, with it being a horror-themed Arthurian legend style and art that is both familiar and bizarre. When it comes to the bad, this game has way too many upgrades, menus, currencies, and XP outside of battles to easily keep track of. It is very easy to get overwhelmed quickly, despite the tons of tutorials. Additionally, deck building feels less extensive than similar games, mostly because it's a lot harder to remove or upgrade cards you already have. The game seems to focus more on adding powerful cards and passes rather than deck curation. And lastly, this game runs poorly for whatever reason, despite not being a graphical powerhouse. On PC, I had frame rate issues at 1080p on a 1080 Ti, which genuinely surprised me. As you know, rate games here on a 3-point scale: must play, maybe consider, don't bother. I think Tainted Grail Conquest is a maybe consider, but it is a bit of a hidden gem. As one of the weirdos who actually kickstarted and played the Tainted Grail board game, I was curious how they'd convert that game's incredible setting into a roguelike, and I feel they did a fantastic job here. While the game does seem to add mechanics and upgrades just for the sake of having more mechanics and upgrades sometimes, the core combat and card gathering is completely solid, and is improved further by the massive number of different classes to unlock and play, as well as the continuing quest lines. If you beat Slay the Spire and thought it wasn't complicated enough and wanted something with a little more meat on its bones, you will love Tainted Grail Conquest. But that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching, and go out there and enjoy Tainted Grail Conquest.